We have Doc Amitay back with us again. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Today we're going to talk about early childhood development and parenting tactics for 2- and 4-year-olds, because that is what I happen to have as far as children goes. And, well, it's always good to get some better skills under your belt.
All right. And are you opening up to people to write in if they have their own questions?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
They want to challenge what I say?
Would love it.
All right.
We like a little bit of the Thunderdome up in here. So, all right. So I got 2- and 4-year-old. What can I expect from them?
Hell. Pain. Or to quote Clubber Lang, pain.
Pain.
Yeah, well, I mean, and I forget, I think your boy's 4 and your daughter's 2?
I have 2 boys.
Or 2 boys. Well, that's what you think. My psychic energies are saying something otherwise. We'll be having a different conversation in a few years.
Yay. That'll be a fun bridge to cross.
All right, so 4 and 2. So what to expect? So here's what a lot of people neglect, okay? When they look at family structures, I mean, it seems so obvious, but they fail to look at the relationship between the 2 kids and how much of an impact it has on each of them, because their role in life is defined by in large part by how they relate to each other, how they're treated with respect to each other. Yeah. So what to expect, I think, is going to be shaped largely by how you and your partner deal with the kids. Okay, that's how I'm going to open it up with.
All right, fair enough. Well, I guess information is important then in that case. My ex and I are separated. Okay. Given the title X. And so how would that play a role in their development?
Yeah, now you've added a whole new level of potential chaos. And let me just 1 second, please. I'm just trying to put some stuff up there. Yeah, sorry. So yeah, so we have chaos because, and I know nothing about your ex. I don't even know if she watches this. No, okay. That's what you think. But so, you know, when they're separated families, I always say this to couples that I work with. I say, people always talk about a broken home. And I say, you can have 2 intact, healthy homes rather than 1 broken home. So if the 2 of you are working cooperatively, if you don't undermine each other, and if you work together to help reduce the, let's say, potential chaos, scheduling issues, stability and structure, safety, these kind of things that a kid needs to feel. If you work together to establish that and to maintain it, then there are fewer problems. Most of the families I work with, whether I'm assessing them or treating them, assessing or treating, they don't have that. They're fighting against each other, whatever age the kid is. So how would you say, if I can ask, how would you say your relationship with your ex is with regard to the kids?
When it comes to the kids, we are very good in communication. Now that the custody battle's over, we've had a lot of steady improvement over the last year and a bit, I would say. So, yeah, we're good at communicating. We work really well with arranging appointments, being flexible in our schedules and stuff like that. Never bad. At least I don't badmouth her in front of the kids.
Well, let's hope she doesn't do
at all. To be fair, she's a great mom.
Okay. All right. And what about? I don't mean to get too personal here, but instead of just using some one-size-fits-all approach, it's important to look at the individual's circumstances and context. So, do you have a current partner?
Sort of seeing someone long distance.
Long distance. Okay. So she wouldn't have an impact on the kids?
No, not yet.
Okay. Because this is going to sound really old school, but I think it's pretty clear that people who don't subscribe to the PC culture will acknowledge that having 2 parents or 2 caregivers or having different types of caregivers is really important. So having, and that's just a fact, and people hate to hear it, but look, we know this has been going on for thousands of years, hundreds of thousands of years. The females are more nurturing by and large. Doesn't mean that the father has to be cold, whatever, but each parent can bring a very different type of perspective, type of parenting, to the kids. And it's important because this is going to model for the kids how to behave, what to expect, who to teach them who they are. So having separated parents, doesn't necessarily mean you're robbing them of that. It just means that the timing will be a bit off. So instead of having two parents together, where one is the mom and the dad,
Yeah.
doing it at two different times. And it can be mom and mom, it can be dad and dad, but we just have to recognize that if you have two people, again, it doesn't matter about the sex. It matters how they relate to the kid. There has to be a good cop and a bad cop. You hope it's not always the same one, but more people, more perspective, more parents trying to corral and defeat the kids is important, because otherwise those kids will divide and conquer.
Savages, fucking monsters. Part of my language.
Yeah, seriously. I've got 3 daughters, for anyone who's wondering. My daughters range from ages 20 to 8.
That's wow. That's quite the range there. But how many kids you got?
3.
3? Oh.
Yeah. The first 2 were really well planned.
Well done, sir. I'm a big proponent of the whole making babies thing. So you can ask my Twitter followers. They like it.
All right.
I think so.
Yeah, so I mean, so it's important to recognize the context or the environment. Let's never downplay that. And you know what, a 4 and a 2-year-old, someone might say they're raised in the same environment, but they're not, because whatever happens, let's say tomorrow, or even during the custody battle, the youngest one, well, they're too young, but if they were 8 years old, they would have been old enough to have picked up on the environment that was happening at the time, whereas the younger one would not have, if they're too young. So people have to realize the environment may be the same in theory, but the fact is they're at different ages throughout, unless they're twins. And so they'll process everything. They'll be affected differently by everything because of that different age. So
their experience of the same environment will be vastly different depending on their ages.
Exactly. Unless you somehow maintain a consistent environment the whole time. And that's not likely to happen.
No, that sounds like too nigh impossible, I would say.
Right. So I'm curious then. Let's go for you, because you asked the question. When you had the second child, and do your followers know your kids' names, or do we call them big one, little one? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Second child was born after she and I had gotten together. He's not biologically mine, as it turns out. Found out after about a year, which is fine. I always knew that there was a chance.
Okay.
But I'm his guardian. I have full parental rights. They'll have to pry that from my cold dead fingers, sort of deal.
Right.
But yeah, he was born after she and I had split up. For the first 9 months of his life, I saw him for like maybe 8 hours a week. That was all she let me. And then I won the custody battle, which put both boys in each of our houses, like almost exactly 50-50.
Okay.
With a few hour variance, but.
Right. Okay. And again, the boys' names?
Jasper is the youngest and Jeremy is the oldest.
Jeremy. Okay. So when Jasper came about, this is a bit interesting because, and as a parenting expert myself, one of the questions I ask or one of the important things I ask the parents is, how did they, if they have more than one kid, how did they prepare the older one for the youngest arrival? Because that's going to have a huge impact before the kid even arrives on the older one's mentality, toward that kid. So how was Jeremy primed?
I genuinely actually don't know, because I barely got to see it. Like, when I found out that my kid's mom was pregnant with Jasper, we had already been separated. She had moved to BC from Alberta to save up money for down payment on a house and stuff by living at her parents' place, and was going to move back to Edmonton. And then we found out she was pregnant. So I left music school to come be with the kids and help her out and all that, and walked into a custody battle that I wasn't expecting, which was a party, as you can imagine. So I didn't really get to see Jeremy very much. So we didn't really talk. Like, I didn't get to see him very much for, I think it was like 8 months. I saw him for a couple hours a week, like a day a week kind of thing.
Okay.
And then, so I didn't really actually get to take part in that too much. When he and I hung out, it was more like when he and I spent time together, we just kind of played with each other, kind of a thing. And there wasn't much conversation about Jasper's coming.
Okay. Now, he was also around 2 at the time, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So his, understanding will be pretty low. But the fact is, too many parents do not kind of prep their kids for major transitions, change, whether it's a move, change in school, new kid coming, or separation. And you had several of those all at the same time, right?
Yeah.
So we have no idea. Luckily, he was quite young, so it would have less of an impact.
Yeah.
But we don't know how he kind of sort of interpreted the arrival of Jasper. So was it a threat? Was his mom, kind of robbing him of the time with mom and everything? At 2 years old, you don't really understand it too much, but
Yeah.
you do sense it.
Yeah.
It suddenly goes from all the attention to you. Suddenly, wait, it's split between two kids, and he might be getting the short end of the stick if he's like if his mom was like any other parent. It might be like an 80-20 split at this point when a new baby comes, right? So, and again, I say all this only because far too many parents neglect the role of the siblings or the dynamic between the
Yeah.
siblings when they're trying to understand each of their characters.
Okay.
So, right. So the answer to what to expect, it's largely contingent on how all that stuff went down and how it continues to go down. So
Okay.
you see them 50% of the time, right?
Yep.
Right. So today, these days, when you see them, if it's just you and you got them, let's say during a regular day, they're not at school or daycare, they're just like at home.
Yeah.
Are they playing together? Do they each have their separate friends? Are they individuals? Like, how do they do that?
Jeremy has his own separate friends. I don't know anybody with kids Jasper's age, but he tends to hang out with me more when Jeremy's off playing with his friends.
Okay.
They play together a lot, which is really nice.
They do. Okay.
We're having a little bit of an issue with Jeremy being a bit of a bully. He threw a rock from about a foot away from Jasper's face into his face. So,
Yeeks.
yeah,
Okay. And that's what I was getting to. That was literally going to be my next question. When it comes to two boys, and again, anybody who wants to deny that kids are biologically wired differently based on their sex is a PC fool.
Oh, absolutely.
Right. So having two boys is very different from having two girls. And I was going to ask you about this size and age differential and how you manage that, because that's going to have a huge impact, especially on Jasper, on how he sees the world.
So, for the most part, like, I have a boomy voice, so I can pretty much shut down anything just by raising my voice a little bit.
Okay.
When it comes down to, like, I'll give Jeremy a few times of, crossing the line of hitting it before he starts getting put into timeout. When he did throw that rock, he did get one swat on the bum because, like, at that point, it was just he'd been pushing his brother around, throwing dirt all day, kind of a thing. And
so here, because someone hearing that, right now is calling Child Protective Services. He swatted him on the bum, which in Canada, spanking is still legal, right? As long as it's done over the clothes and it's done in a modulated manner, right? And not meant to hurt, but to discipline. So so anyone who wants to cry child abuse, I'm not a fan of spanking, but here's the thing I want to ask you: in that moment when you did spank him, was it out of like just in the moment, or did you kind of say to him, okay, this is your punishment, blah blah blah? How did it go?
Like, I'm not particularly proud of it. It was in the moment. It did end up curbing that behavior,
right,
for the rest of the time that he was with me. I think it was another like 2.5 days. There was no bullying, no pushing his brother around, throwing stuff at him, nothing like that.
Okay. And did you explain to him all like after? And
yeah, I had a conversation with him about how, okay, you didn't like how this felt. It really wasn't nice. You didn't like going in timeout and just having to deal with this situation. This is what you're doing to your brother every time you hit him.
Right. Okay. Yeah. And that's the thing, because when I hear these discussions all the time about, is spanking okay, blah, 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 people pretend that every, let's say, type of spanking or discipline or whatever is equal. And no, it's not. If you just spank the kid first out of rage, I remember watching the Monsters, Inc. And the one scene that really got to me was when the girl, Boo, sees Scully on TV, or she's watching him scaring the other monsters. And then later on, he sees a video of her watching him and being terrified. Okay.
Yeah.
And I saw that. I was like, oh, geez, because I've lost my cool with my kids. And I explain to them afterwards every single time. I say, look, Daddy had a temper tantrum. I don't care how old they were. I tell them, I had a temper tantrum. I lost my cool. Here's why I got angry. You know, this, and this, but my response was disproportionate to what happened, and that's not cool. It's not on you. It's me. I got to do better.
Which is something that I said to Jeremy as well.
Very important. So when that happens, and the reason I'm saying this is, in my mind, when I knew what we were going to talk about, I've got like 30 different threads that are already kind of lying there, and I'm going to pick them up, and they're all going to tie together. It may not seem like it, but they will all tie together. Okay. All right. So this idea of having that discussion with the kid, even if they're 2 years old, all right, it just helps. I mean, it's harder for them to understand it, but it helps the kids understand that I'm not some terrible deficient creature, because in their DNA, you know, they're supposed to trust us. They're wired to trust the caregivers.
Yeah.
Right? Follow us to the ends of the earth. We're going to protect them. We made it to adulthood. So this is how they're going to make it to adulthood, right? It's in their DNA, like other animals. So when a parent loses their shit and just goes crazy on the kid, the normal kid doesn't say, wow, my parents lost their shit. The normal kid says, I must be a terrible monster or piece of shit or whatever to have warranted that. Obviously, different language. Okay. So by explaining to them afterwards, you're preventing them from internalizing your own, you know, let's say loss of cool.
Yeah.
Right. So it's very important. And so when parents talk about disciplining their kid or whatever, spanking them and it happened to them or whatever, well, different people have different temperaments. So for some people, they get spanked, it means nothing. For others, it's traumatic. B, is it done out of rage? Is it controlled? Is it, you know, how does that impact the kid? And C, does a child understand why it's being done and that this is a consequence? Or do they just learn, I better do it when dad's not around?
Yeah.
Right. And if you had just spanked him without saying anything, that's what he would have learned. He would have learned, he would have learned bigger is better, and I'm bigger than Jasper, so I'm gonna kick the shit out of him. And B, I'll only do that when dad's not around.
Yeah.
Okay. So I just want to throw all that out there as far as this idea of disciplining. And again, with bullying. So here's the thing. I say this all the time. So I'll ask you, okay? Actually, you know, you already answered it. So I'm just gonna help people understand. So I'm in a change room one day with probably my youngest one, and we're just, you know, we're going skating. And there were two brothers, and one of them is wailing away on the other kid. I think they're like maybe 8 and 6 or around that age. Okay. Just wailing at this kid. He's pushing him around, just being a real dick to the younger one. And his dad's just sitting there, and other people are looking at him, and he kind of looks to the other person, goes, ha ha ha, boys will be boys. Right.
No.
Well, boys will be boys, but bullies will be bullies, and assholes will be assholes. And that little, like, I'm just watching. I wanted to say something, but this was a father. I was afraid that if I say something, it's going to cause a huge fight. I'll be the one somehow who looks like an asshole to everybody, and it's going to come back on those kids. But you know, that kind of parenting is bad parenting, because the younger one, all he's learning is might makes right. And so either he's going to learn how to pick on kids smaller than him, or he might try to find ways to get back at his brother, but, you know, kind of like deceptively, because he knows he can't win through strength alone. And that's, you know, there's something to that kind of lesson, fine, but no kid should be bullied. And that is what drives me crazy when I hear parents making these idiotic comments. That's far too hands off. A parent has to come in and kind of toe the line when it reaches that line, versus the parent who's always hovering and they come in for everything. We have to always see parenting or anything in life on a spectrum. Any of the extremes, or either of the extremes, is usually not good. We got to just slide it down a little bit, tone it down. So it's just that every time I work with people, especially with parents, I always say that I understand that your mind wants to go in one of several ways. Am I going to, you know, be too interventionist? Am I going to be too hands off? It's like neither is a good answer. Let's be somewhere in the middle. And anyway, so that's that parent, he was way off on the wrong end, and those kids are going to be somewhat messed up as they get older. And I think it's important, though, for kids to have that sense of big, small, dominance, how to play the games right and everything. And if you act inappropriately, you get consequences, but it's got to be managed. Like, it's got to be moderate. Can't be too much like these idiots.
Yeah,
the idiot father. Anyway,
consistency is also really important in that kind of thing. Experience.
I didn't hear what you said.
Oh, consistency is really important in any kind of punishments that you, or consequences that you deal out. At least or at least that's the way I've come to understand it.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Any kind of parenting consistency is important, and it's consistency from the parent, and it's also consistency from the parents. So that if kids, I mean, this is, you ask what to expect. Well, kids learn pretty quickly. If one parent is one way and the other parent's the other way, they're going to play them off of each other, or they'll know to, to go to one parent or to avoid the other or whatever else. So they need consistency. And here's the thing: parents have to understand, as so well, as animals, we are like every other animal, which is from the day we're born. Our main goal in life is to understand, to control, to master our environment from the day that we're born. Okay.
Yeah.
It's a wild, confusing, makes no sense environment. And little by little, we learn to master it. And so when you say consistency, I always tell everybody, you can't master something until you've kind of got a sense of, like, there's got to be a sense of predictability. Predictability allows you to say, okay, I know that if I do A and B, C is going to happen. So when the parents are inconsistent, that really messes with the kids' sense of their environment, because they don't learn that A plus B equals C. A plus B can be C, D, E, or F, and so they never know. So yeah, consistency is huge.
Okay. Now, Jeremy is, as I said, he's 4. He's going to be going into kindergarten soon. I'm not entirely sure. It's not this year. I think it's next year. He's going in. What can I do to prep him for that?
It's funny. So every August or September, all the radio and TV stations call me up and ask me, every year, preparing kids for the first day of school or first school, like when they go into kindergarten the first time. Yeah. And I always smile, because with my 3 daughters, we've never had any problems any of the years. Yeah. You know why? Well, besides the fact I'm a psychologist, because that helps. So if the kid is made to feel like this is going to be the biggest thing in the world, that's anxiety provoking.
Yeah.
If it's kind of like, it's another environment, you've gone to play dates, you've gone to gymnastics or this or that, or daycare for a day here or there. If they're made to feel that it's just kind of an extension of their past experiences, it's far less daunting. So I always tell parents, just be cool. And I just watch the parents' faces, whether they're anxious because they're afraid that their kid's going to be bullied, or they're not going to be able to cope without them, or they had a bad experience themselves, or they want the child to be there because they have a hard time letting go. Whatever it is, that anxiety gets transferred to the kid. The kid feels it. So I always say the best thing is just to be really calm, just to treat, and to give them a sense of, you've got this, a sense of self-efficacy. So talking about all the positives and everything like that, there will be a small percentage of kids who have an actual attachment disorder, separation anxiety, and that's going to require maybe professional intervention. But and that's a tiny percentage. We're talking like maybe 1%, 5%. For anyone else, it's farther along the scale. It's not crisis. It's just a challenge. And it's one of the hardest things in the world to let your kid go that first day when they're crying and they're reaching out or something like that. If that happens, right. So with Jeremy, has he been in daycare?
No, doesn't
so
do
never.
No, because I stay home Monday through Thursday with my boys, and she's with them over the weekend. So typically, like, childcare is done by us.
Okay.
He's had some like babysitters for like an hour or 2 here and there, but for the most part, we've kept it between us as primary caregivers.
Okay. So that's going to be a bit of an adjustment, because now they're going from a personalized routine within the family to a school routine where everyone's got to go, lockstep basically. And that can be a bit of an adjustment. So I would, that's where you can prep him and just let him know it's going to be different this way. They've gone to birthday parties, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So it's kind of like telling him, remember at the birthday party where at this time everyone did this and everyone had cake or whatever, because that it's a socialization, and they have to really be prepared to follow this. And unless they go to one of those special schools where every kid gets to do whatever they want, there's going to be a lot of expectations on them, to follow routines, do what everyone. And, if you don't do that, pretty soon you get singled out. Pretty soon you get that label of the difficult one or whatever else. You get it from the teacher and from the kids. So, you got to be vigilant of that, got to be mindful of that. But before the school, like I said, just treat it like normal. If there's an opportunity to take them to like a drop-in center or anything else where there are a lot of kids and there is a structure, even if it's once or twice, just to kind of let them know, hey, that's what it's like, you know? I think it's a good prep.
We do some. I take the boys to it's called Strong Start. It's like a prepping thing where it kind of gets them used to that. So okay, that makes sense.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so that's a good thing. Again, just be calm, check your own anxiety, and talk to the mom about that as well, because I have no idea what she's saying to him. I don't know how she's reacting. And if one parent is, for example, really concerned and, you know, like trying to make them feel good, but they're kind of just enhancing their anxiety by being overly, you know, concerned, and the other parents really, hey, don't worry about it, they can interpret that as he doesn't care.
Yeah.
You know, mom's the one who loves me. She's the one who cares. This, you know, dad's a cold bastard. So you have to be careful about that. That's where it's really important to have that consistency again.
Yeah, that actually kind of, because I tend to be more along the lines of like, yeah, no, just go do the thing. Like,
right,
I'll take the kids out to the backyard and be like, go play for an hour. I got dishes to do.
Right, and you know that's the healthy way. But if the kid, again, goes back to consistency, if the kid always got the message of be careful, blah blah blah, okay, then some kids will interpret it as well, dad knows I'm cool, I'm good, whatever. And other kids again are like, he doesn't care. He's throwing me on this big, expansive backyard with the wolves. Like, what's wrong with him? So, right, it's never that they just interpret the interaction as it is. It's always compared with other interactions, other people, other times, whatever. It's not like they're doing a tally. They're not writing these things down and taking notes, but somehow these comparisons are happening.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. So what, how do I word this? So I find that I'm a very unstructured person, as I'm sure you can imagine. Is there tactics that I can do to help my boys succeed in structured environments? Because I am not a particularly structured person. I never did well in school. I've done significantly better being in an environment where I dictate my own hours, my own work, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So how do I, as a person who is very much unstructured, I don't even set an alarm. I haven't set an alarm in 3 years. I'm kind of worried about Jeremy going back to school just because I don't function well under that structure. So I'm just wondering, how can I make that transition easier for all three of us? Well, actually, I guess all four of us, because, you know, Holly is part of the equation as well.
Right. Well, again, it's making sure that there is some kind of consistency. I would ask her what her routine is like, just so you have a sense. All right. You don't have to follow it exactly, but that at least gives you some kind of ballpark on what, you know, what they're used to. Now, most kids love, and here's what I'm going to contradict myself intentionally. The idea is most kids love lack of structure, right? Playtime, just do it. They want no one telling them what to do. That's great. On the other hand, kids need structure. It's one of the most important things. Those Beatles, those hippies, they got it wrong. All you need is love. No. You need love and structure. That's what you need. And without that, because without that external structure, the kids don't develop a sense of internal structure. Okay. It goes from outside to inside, whether it's modeling how the parents are acting or it's just the routines that are in place for them. That's part of it. I mean, the easiest thing to see is if a child's feeling emotionally vulnerable, if they're crying or scared or whatever, and the parent doesn't help them learn to regulate themselves, right? They don't have the sense of, okay, my parents got my back. My parents are there. You know, they don't have to teach the kid how to cry properly or how to suck it up, but they have to have that sense that the parent is there. Okay. That external security, that external regulation, the child internalizes so they can learn to to regulate themselves. It's the same thing for scheduling, for structure as well. They need it on the outside at first. So guess what, Kyle, you're going to have to change your schedule, you know, your way of doing things a little bit. It doesn't have to be exactly the same as Holly or anybody else, but you may have to set the alarm. You don't want to be running around or whatever else like that, you know, because you want them to have the sense of, okay, it's not chaos. I get up, do this, have breakfast, whatever. So you have to change a little bit. I mean, quite frankly, look up. If it was just me, I tell the kids all the time. I say, if it was just me and the girls and their mom wasn't around, I said, you guys would be dead by now. Now, I don't say that to freak them out. I tell them so they can appreciate their mother. All
Yeah.
right. Because she is very organized, very structured. She puts sticky things everywhere and labels. Like, I'm the opposite as well. I'm very unstructured, very unorganized.
Holly sounds very similar to your wife. Just
Yeah. Well, and and there's a lot of merit to it, as if it's not too extreme, of course, right? So again, I think talking to her, getting some advice, or just again just understanding her routine. And I have no idea. I'm not going to make any assumptions about your relationship with Holly. But with a bad couple, a bad breakup, they would be like, "What? You trying to copy me? You trying to do better than me? Screw you." In a good family, it'd be okay. I get it. He just wants to be consistent. He wants the children to have a consistent environment, and then she can tell you what to do and not hold it over your head. I hope it's that type of relationship.
we've definitely been moving more towards that. For a while, it was very much like anything I did was just an example of like actually accused me of trying to get out of paying child support because I was asking for more time with my kids. I was just like, no.
Right. Okay, well, so there may be some. I mean, here's what I would do. When you do ask her about this, go there as humbly as possible. Put on her and just say, that's the one thing that I really, admired about you was your organization, your structure, your whatever. And I really want to bring that to the kids as well. So there's a consistency. If she takes that the wrong way, there's something seriously wrong with her. Tell her, call me. I'll straighten her out. Okay.
Okay, I will. Yeah. No. I was gonna say, yeah, like we found so far that like I tend to be far better at disciplining the boys.
Okay.
She was talking about how the boys are just always like Jeremy was always pushing Jeremy around and
pushing Jasper around. You mean?
Yeah. Always mixing that. I got to change the name in the baby book or change the page. But yeah, it's like Jeremy would be pushing Jasper around, and she's like, I don't understand why he's doing this. I'm like, well, other than like a few more isolated instances, those don't happen. But she has always been better at having the schedule. So I think you are onto something with the whole asking her about the scheduling kind of thing.
Right. And here's the thing. And again, I just want to throw this out there because not enough people say this. And the ones who say this are usually very right-wing, conservative, religious-based. And anyone who knows me knows that's not me at all.
Yeah.
So this is coming from I'm a parenting expert. And what I'm saying is legit. All right. Which is, and I see this all the time. Again, going back to what I was saying earlier, if the kids are acting out in one environment, not the other, that's because there's no fear. If Jeremy's not afraid, if his mom's not disciplining him, then why would he stop? So, that's why it's so important to have, that kind of the harder person in the family, at least as far as discipline, right? And here's the thing, though. If you were a complete authoritarian, a control freak, there would be the discipline, there would be excessive punishment, and then you would be monitoring them all the time and not letting them just go out in their backyard or whatever and doing stuff. You're not like that. You're just coming in with the discipline and the consequence. I'm telling you right now, if someone asked me, well, they've asked me many times, why do so many of the most recent generations suck? Why are they so horrible? It's because parents have not understood that you need the kid. One of the most important things the kid needs to learn is there is a consequence to your actions.
Yeah.
Do what you want. You're allowed to do this, but it's either going to be a good or a bad consequence. And kids need to learn that. That's part of the structure. And if you don't learn if you don't learn that, and if it's not done the right way, like I said earlier, if you just learn, like with my upbringing, I didn't get lectures. I didn't get explanation for why something was wrong. I got the backhand if I was lucky. Okay. Objects thrown at me at other times. Like, it was not a good environment. If it was not good at all. My parents know that. Like, I've called them out on that many times. Okay.
Yeah.
So I never learned I shouldn't do it for this or this reason. I just learned how not to get caught.
Yeah. That was something that I had read somewhere, that like by not explaining things, they don't learn not to do it, just how to be sneakier about it.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And the other thing is this. So there's like a dozen types of parenting, but traditionally there's three types. Yeah. There's authoritarian, authoritative, and permissive. And permissive, sometimes it's called permissive / neglectful, or they put permissive and or neglectful. So people confuse authoritarian and authoritative. So authoritarian is the dictator. That's the one where just do what I say, don't ask questions, you know. And those kids, they don't grow up internalizing a sense of right or wrong. They just either follow rules completely, or they follow rules completely when the person's there and they try to sneak, you know, like we were saying about the sneakier. The authoritative parent is the one who has the discipline, has the rules, lets the kid know that in society there's a hierarchy. And if the kid does wrong, they are told why it's wrong. They are told the expectations clearly. That's very important. They know those expectations beforehand. And when they violate them, or if you have to teach them the expectations, it's done in a clear way. The kid learns why it was wrong and why they should do better. That's the type of parenting that produces the best kids. The type of parenting that we're seeing these days is the permissive one. And that's where parents think they're actually, you know, I'm just letting them be who they are. I'm loving. No, you're not. You're a coward.
Yeah.
You have to put that discipline and structure. I'm not saying if the kid is, you know, is 5 minutes late, they have to do 20 push-ups. I'm not saying that, but the kid has to know again that there's a reason. There you go. I'll tell you right now, you know what the best kind of, your kids are too young right now, but when they get a bit older, okay, when they're old enough to ground, guess what you should never do?
What?
Don't ground them.
No?
No. Unless they're running with like some bad kids. All right. I tell this to people all the time. Everyone likes to ground. That's what they're taught. They figure take things away. Grounding, taking things away within the house, you know, limiting TV time or iPad or whatever. That's fine. That's not grounding. That's just, you know, limiting them. But keep the kid at home instead of being able to go to a party or a dance or some function. It's horrible on several levels. One, they're not socializing. You want your kid, you don't want them feeling like everyone else is doing something and I'm excluded. That's the worst thing you can do to a kid. Yeah. So grounding them for that reason, bad. Second, you know, you have a miserable kid at home with you, right? Right? If you ground that kid, they're not happy with you. They're pissed off at you. They're stomping around. They're doing whatever. Okay. So with my kids, we never grounded them. We just had them do extra chores. My car got washed every single time. Okay. Like by them, because that was it. I benefit from that. Let the kid go out. They socialize. They're not bothering me. They're not in my face. And they're doing the chores that I want them to do. And I explained to them, I say, look, or you can take the grounding. You want that? Go ahead. Take your pick. Okay.
You can chill in the room for 4 days. That's fine.
Exactly. You know, and that's important. But even that is important because that gives the kid a sense of agency. Like, okay, I have at least some control over my bad fate. The bad fate's there because I screwed up. But now I can determine I can either take this punishment or this punishment. So you're kind of working together. They can't just blame or accuse the parent of being a dictator. They'll still say it, but you know, but somehow they'll realize there is some let's say working together in this case. But again, the parent has to realize in the end they're on top. And there was this stupid. I did this on TVO years ago. There was a stupid fourth type of parenting, and the person who I was on TVO with was much more reasonable than I was led to believe. All right, it would sound like more authoritative, but this parenting, Google it. I hope your viewers Google this. It's called, I don't know if it's still around. It was called democratic parenting. All right, tell me what you think democratic parenting implies.
It implies that the children get a vote about what goes on in their lives as far as consequences and rewards go. Yep.
Or and everything, planning meals, vacations, and everything. It's like, what kind of idiot parent does that? You are basically subjecting the rest of society to your idiot kid who thinks that they can walk into a job, a class, or anything else and have their way. No, you can't. There's a hierarchy. You better learn it. And that's the number one complaint when I speak to employers they have of millennials. They say entitlement. They don't understand. There's rules and they need to be followed. You don't like it, get the hell out. And, you know, the kids aren't being taught that from a young age. And again, it's not about dictatorship. You know, it's about, you can have a say. Look, we ask our kids all the time, what do you want for this or that? That's fine. We get their input. But in the end, they know that we rule.
Yeah.
Right. So that's the kind of, I'm throwing out these concepts because they are critical. And too many parents these days are not doing it. And I got to throw out a few more here. Okay. Can I throw out a few more or?
Yeah, man. Throw all the stuff out that you want.
Okay. I'm sorry. Cause I'm just monopolizing. I just thought if you have other questions, but should I just, okay, let me throw out one more. Okay. And I think it's out west. In fact, unschooling, not homeschooling, unschooling. Okay. So here's this crazy concept. And what I do is when I work with clients, I like to kind of juxtapose different ideas. So I don't just give one idea, because if I just give one idea, I know that the person might in their mind be thinking of this, or this idea. I like to put these other ideas out there already and say, okay, I'm not talking about this. Let's focus on this. Okay. So unschooling is kind of the opposite of what I was saying. It goes beyond democratic parenting. So unschooling is this concept, and apparently there's different levels. So, because I had some students look into it, and they said some of the unschooling seems a little bit more reasonable, but I've had a number of patients who did the radical unschooling, which they all spoke about as regular unschooling. And that's basically, and I'm not making this up here, the premise is, when you, and I'm not seriously, I'm not exaggerating, when you say no to your kid, you are causing brain damage.
What?
Yeah. You are causing some kind of damage to their brain, structural damage, I believe they believe, to the brain.
That caused freaking structural damage to my brain. Holy crap.
Yeah, that's the premise of unschooling. So these parents, I believe they just do it at home, but sometimes they have groups, they have like little communities, so they might all come together, and they let the kid decide everything, literally everything. You don't want to, for today's homework lesson, what do you want to do? Oh, you want to watch TV? Okay, go ahead. You want to do this? Go ahead. And so all the parents that I knew who did unschooling, they had quite a bit of money, and so they could do some pretty fascinating lesson plans, and they would stay home and do with the kid, like they devote themselves to the kid. Yeah. And one of them, I have to be careful, I don't want to give too much information, but basically she had a child, she had a daughter, and I'm not making this up here. She would come to me every week and say, I had to fire, or no, I lost my most recent babysitter. She would go through one babysitter every few days. No exaggeration. And I said to her, I said, maybe it's because your kid's a monster. These babysitters, they have no recourse. The kid's not allowed. You can't say no to the kid, and the kid would, treat the babysitter with impunity, or treat them terribly with impunity. And that's the radical unschooling issue. But if that's what the kid wants, that's what's best for them, and that's the important thing. It's not that they get what they want; it's what's best for them. And this is a radical, or I would say actually a literal interpretation of Carl Rogers. So Carl Rogers, the great humanist, human-centered therapy, client-centered therapy, person-centered therapy, a great theorist. But let me tell you a few things about him. People misinterpret his words, and they accuse other people of misinterpreting. But here's the thing: some people interpret it as him saying unconditional positive regard or unconditional love. He said unconditional positive regard, but basically, you let your kid, do what they want, all right, and you still love them regardless. And then people say he didn't actually say that. What he said was that you tell the kid you always love them. This is just good parenting 101. You always love them. You always value them no matter what they do. But there's certain behaviors that they do which upset you or which whatever else. So if you choose to do that, fine, you get to do that. But just understand it's going to have a negative impact on me. All right. That's one interpretation of Rogers. But I'm telling you right now, if you actually read his 1959 book where he started talking about this stuff, he said unconditional positive regard is the only way to have a fully functioning, healthy child, raise them with unconditional positive regard. And then he wrote, I'm just paraphrasing here, while theoretically this is how to create this outcome, in reality, it never occurs.
Yeah.
Right. He's literally saying,
straight up said it doesn't work.
Yeah. No, what he said was it never happens. Okay, that it just doesn't happen. Now the question is, why doesn't it happen? Well, because your kid would be dead by the age of 3 or 2. All right, but he was almost kind of putting the blame on parents, saying that they just don't have the capacity to raise their kids with complete unconditional positive regard. We always put conditions on them, and so he's chastising people for that because he believed that humans, animals, and even plants are designed to always maximize their potential. So, animals don't self-sabotage. They don't self-handicap. They're always trying to, just grow to be their best. And he said humans would be the exact same way, but society, starting with our parents, limits us. They prevent us from being, from reaching our potential because they put no on, in place. And I'm telling you right now, when I looked at Roger's original writing, he pretty much said that every time a parent prevents a child from doing what they want to do, because he believes that everything the child wants to do is about self-actualizing, it's about growing. He says every time they do that, the kid kind of becomes fragmented. They lose a bit of their personality. It doesn't go away, but it's kind of over here. It's not consistent and, not integrated. So that's the consequence of saying no. So whether you call it brain damage or fragmenting their personality, this is a really, I think, unrealistic way of looking at parenting and kids. And so unschooling takes it to the nth degree. They don't put any limits and everything, and they're basically raising kids who are going to be complete monsters who can't function in society, because not everyone's going to say, go ahead, you want to come into work at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, work only 1 hour and take a vacation for 2 weeks afterwards on your very first week? Go ahead. Not going to happen, kids.
No.
So,
not only that, having to do with the word no, at least in my opinion, it teaches you how to operate under constraints. Right? Like, it teaches you how to adapt to things that don't necessarily work out the way you wanted them to. I could be mistaken about that, but I mean, I've heard no significantly more over the course of my life than I've heard yes, by like a vast margin.
I have to think about that. It's probably the same with me, but I just don't listen. That's my problem. I don't listen to no. But yeah, you're right. I probably heard it. And again, with my parents, it was usually just no, like no and no fighting back kind of thing. I would fight back because I never internalized why it was in my best interest not to do certain things. I just thought they're trying to prevent me from having fun. So screw them. I'm going to have fun.
Well, that's the whole point, the whole job description of parenting, right? We just ruin the dreams of small children.
I say that as well. I say our job is to mess our kids up. So either way, yes. Okay.
We just mess them up in new and exciting ways. Totally different than what the ways that we were messed up.
And we all said the same thing. I will never raise my kids the way I was raised, and blah, blah, blah. And in the end, we often do, to some degree, end up doing that, whether we want to or not.
There's this totally weird phenomenon that's been happening over the last 2 years where I'll open my mouth and my mom and dad start speaking, and it's just weird, man. The most impressive case of ventriloquism I've ever seen in my life.
It's amazing. Yeah. I mean, because somehow you internalized those messages. One thing that my parents said to me, and this is taking it to an extreme, and thank goodness they did it though. Okay. Now look, I'm neurotic in 100 different ways, but I've learned to channel it adaptively. Right? I take that energy and I put it into good ways. But the reason I can do that is my parents said to me something that very few parents would ever say. And I have some patients who their childhoods were so messed up that I would have predicted that they would have just been a basket case. But in every case, there's only been a few. Okay, sorry, messed up childhoods, lots of cases. But what I'm about to say, there's only been a few of them, including me, and the pattern's always the same. So here's the thing. It goes back to what I was saying earlier about when I have a temper tantrum, whatever, I tell my kids, hey, it's on me, it's not you, right? When my parents were, I'm going to say 4 or 5, when I was 4 or 5, because I only say this because I remember the conversation, and after the age of 4, before the age of 4 or 5, we forget virtually everything. It's just memories of memories or memories of what's told to us. We don't actually have concrete memories of before the age of 4 or 5. It's called childhood amnesia. Our hippocampus changes dramatically around that time. So I must have been around 4 or 5 years old, and I remember my parents basically saying to me, I think it was my mom, basically saying to me, "We don't know what the hell we're doing. We had you when we were young." My mom was 22 when she had me. She was 20 when she adopted my brother. Well, she was 22 when she adopted my brother, but he was 3 at the time. No, 2. Sorry. He was 3. He was 2 years older than me. I can't even think. But anyway, so they told me from a very young age, and my brother, they said, "We don't know what the hell we're doing. We're hippies. We're young and stuff like that." And by them telling me that, from that young age, I swear, kid you not, and I remember this, every time my parents would do something incredibly stupid, destructive, or whatever, either to me or to each other, I was like, man, they're messed up. Yeah. I never once thought I'm messed up. That came later, but I didn't internalize it. And parents need to recognize that your kids are going to interpret things in ways you could never imagine. And so by trying to create that structure, in this case, it's a verbal structure. It's basically saying, again, this is not on you. I'm containing my craziness with me, right? That's not you, separated from you. And my parents did that. And again, because my parents really did a lot of shitty things as parents, and I always knew it was them screwing up, not me that deserved it. Now, did I deserve, actually, I probably deserved most of what I got, but not to the same degree that I got it, because I was a really shitty little kid.
Yeah, well, you and me both. I was a large handful, from what I understand.
Yep.
So
was I.
Just to kind of clarify the whole, or summarize what you just said there, it's very useful and valuable to develop a structure that of communication that lets them know that I'm not perfect. I'm doing the best that I can with the knowledge and skills that I have at my disposal.
And always trying to improve.
Yeah, and always trying to improve. Okay.
Yeah. And that no part, what you said, okay, the thing that you said about that no, there was one more thing that it teaches. Okay, I forget what you said. You said it teaches constraints, like operating within the world of constraint, right? Well, the other thing it teaches as well, and this is it, do you know the #1 predictor of success later in life that you can predict? I want to say 3 years old. It might be 3 or 4. I can be off on the age because I'm terrible with numbers. But you know, there's a simple little test, and it's the #1 predictor, or one of the greatest predictors of success later in life. You know what it is?
It's the ability to forego immediate gratification for long-term gain.
Nice. Yes. Delay of yeah, it's oh my god, delay of gratification, exactly. And do you know how they test it?
By putting a marshmallow in front of a kid, saying if you wait 10 minutes, you get 2. But if you eat it now, you're stuck with the 1.
Right. Yeah, the marshmallow test. And so parents should Google that, the marshmallow test. I want to say it was Martin Seligman who first did it. I could be wrong, but yeah, that was like in the 50s or 60s, and they've replicated it time and again. So yeah, delay. So that goes back to the constraints. I want to do this, you know, and if a parent always lets the kid do it now, they never learn to, right, to put those, to delay those that gratification, and be tenacious, and, you know, prioritize basically.
Yeah.
So anyway, yeah, so that was such an important thing. I want. Oh,
good.
Okay, so,
good.
Yeah. Yeah, I have that effect on people. Just blow them out of their chair, right? Okay, so did you want? I mean, has anyone written in and asked any questions or any comments?
Why don't we bring it to the chat, fellas? Watching our little shindig here. What do you want to know? You got some questions about kids? Let's bring them on.
How are they created?
Well, when a man and a woman love each other very much, although that, if your PC doesn't necessarily hold true anymore. I was
just going to say, look at what you've done, you monster. Is that what you're teaching your kids?
Yes. Absolutely. Look, I have transgender family. I respect it, but biology still works the same, whether or not everything else is different. So I'll just kind of take a gander through here. Somebody said permissive parents let their children decide to take hormone blockers because they wanted to play as a princess for a day. Actually, let's touch on that. Good point. So, what is it? Sayanqua Non? I actually don't know how to pronounce that name, but would you say that hormone blockers for the parents that have the trans kids, would that fall under the permissive parenting style that you mentioned earlier?
Not per se, but I can see it being highly correlated, that a parent who is afraid to disappoint their child, is afraid to say no, afraid to challenge their child, they're parenting out of guilt. All of that would be part of permissive parenting. That same type of parent would also go along with what the child says. You know, if they say, I want hormone blockers or something, they wouldn't challenge the kid for fear of the child turning on them or not loving them or abandoning them. And sadly, permissive parents, they have that fear all the time for, you know, even minor stuff. So yeah, I would say that there can be a correlation.
All right. Captain Cutler says, where does free range parenting fall in the 3 types?
That would be that's a good one. That's not permissive parenting. Okay, and that's where people have to be they have to understand. Authoritative parenting, you can still have rules. I would say a good free range parent would be an authoritative parent. So they would let the child, and for people who don't know, they basically, instead of being these helicopter, over intrusive, over encroaching parents, they pretty much let their kids do what they want to a certain degree, more like that we used to have in the 60s and 70s, and even 80s, before stranger danger, before the this epidemic of cult kidnappings that never happened. But that was the panic that helps lead to this change in parenting. It really was from the 80s. So yeah, so a free range parent, if the parent is involved in other ways, has structure, have rules, expectations. So for example, I let my kids go to the schoolyard by themselves, but I say you got to be home at 3 o'clock. That would be authoritative parenting. A permissive free range parent was, yeah, you want to go? Go ahead. We'll be here when you come back. Okay, and that would be it.
How do you feel about some of the young parents today letting their toddlers play with mobile devices?
Okay. So I'm a hypocrite. I sometimes let my young child play with my phone. And I've seen a lot of parents trying to distract their kids. Like when I do a parenting assessment and they have a little baby and they have them in a little room and they're being observed for their visit and they're trying to keep the kid occupied or trying to entertain them, and they can do certain things on the phone, usually musical. I hope it's age appropriate. They're not playing World of Warcraft or something on the phone, but it's something that that the kid can do in a really limited, restricted, specific context. Fine, limited being the key word.
Yeah.
But for other parents where this is just the new TV, it's like a portable TV basically, and that becomes the babysitter. You're not doing your job as a parent. You're teaching the kid basically that you're not the most important thing to me. The child needs to feel that the world revolves around them for the first couple of years. What we call the narcissism of kids. They have to feel the center of the universe, because if they don't, it leads to the sense of insecurity. The parents aren't there for them, whatever. And then you got to slowly kind of teach them, you're not the center. All right. You're just one of several people in this family. So the phone deprives them of that sense of my parents got my back. They're interested, and they say, well, but my kid likes the phone more than me. Then you got a problem. Let them play for a little bit. And if the parent can't take it away from the kid, then you got your permissive parenting by guilt, the fearful parent, which is never good. The other thing that you're doing with the mobile phones is we don't know yet. It's still too soon. The data haven't come in yet, but we don't know what it's doing. There's some speculation to what it's doing to the kids' brains. When you have this much technology and flashing lights and color, everything like that, they believe that it's kind of like making the brain hyperactive. They're afraid that we're going to have a bunch of kids who are raised to be ADHD because all that stimulation so quick, so much, kind of primes the brain as it's developing to always be on the go.
Yes.
That's a real problem. And for anyone who, again, we don't know for certain that that's happening, but there's a lot of speculation. We do know that watching these phones or iPads or whatever before going to bed, we know that somehow, and I'm not a neuropsychologist, so I'm just going with what they say, that it's affecting, like when people look at it, it's affecting the brain in a way that makes it really hard to sleep at night, which is ironic given that a lot of people check their phones and iPads before they go to bed. So either it makes it hard for them to fall asleep, or it disrupts their sleep patterns. They may wake up a few times in the night that they didn't do before. So imagine if that's for adults, imagine what it's doing to little kids' developing brain.
Yeah. All right. How can parents combat, this is from Captain Cutler. Okay. How can parents combat the transgender agenda that is being promoted in schools and television?
Well, hey, do what I do with my kids. So again, let me go off a bit of tangent here, but it relates to it. So I'd be watching TV in the old days with my kids, and the commercials. There was a little period of time where all the commercials were really mean-spirited.
Yeah.
The advertisers thought it was funny, but there was always this lesson to be had. Like just what jerks. So I would watch it with my kids, and I would say, "Man, that looks." I'd ask them, "What do you think about that?" And if they didn't get it, I'd let them know that wasn't funny. That was mean. That was whatever else. So I was always there with my kids. We'd watch Judge Judy together sometimes.
Yeah.
Just for the psychology of it. I love to make my little daughters, little mini psychologists. We try to bet, okay, who's going to win, and based on what she said and all this other stuff. But, again, as we were watching it, if there was a lesson to be had, if I said, here's a lesson, don't marry a bum. they're going to take advantage of you. I mean, that's from Judge Judy. Half the cases are some jerk guy who, who basically is, right, is a parasite. So we use that as a lesson. So let's apply that to the question: how to fight the transgender agenda. If you have honest discussions with your child from a very young age about the information that's coming into them, be actively involved in your school, find out, talk to the teacher. Now, if you say to the teacher, are you going to be ramming down the trans ideology, or down my kids' throats? Obviously, the parent's going to, the teacher's going to be defensive. Yeah, that's not the way to do it. But to have honest discussions with the teacher, asking, what's the reading list? Things like that. We know that in grade 7 or 8, gender is supposed to be talked about. It's supposed to be grade 8. But we also know, and I've been tweeting about this, teachers have been introducing it at a much younger age, which is what Captain Cutler is alluding to. So, it may not be part of the actual official agenda, but it's important to ask the teacher, because the teacher has some latitude with which books they're going to read to them and show them and what things they're going to bring in. So getting a kind of sense of that to see at what age the child is being told about this, because if the child's not hearing it at all, why would you bring it up, right? If it's in their face, then the parent's job is to be there and to know what they're hearing and seeing. Now, when it comes to the internet, all bets are off. I don't care how young your kid is, and I don't care how good you are as far as making sure they don't access the internet at home. Once they step outside, out of your hands, right? They will have access through some other kid whose parent is dumb enough to give them a cell phone at the age of 5 or 6. So, yeah, can't believe that, but I see it. So yeah, it's hard, but all you can do is really try to be there with the kid, and be there to help filter the information. And I hope in an honest, compassionate, tolerant way. If you say, if you see a tranny, punch him, that wouldn't be the right thing to do, right? But to just to have honest discussions with them about anything, not just about the trans agenda, but anything that they might be exposed to.
Okay. Sign qua non asks, what is the extent to which a government should intervene in a parenting dynamic? For example, should the government intervene if the parents are teaching the kids that group X is evil?
Yeah. Again, I do a lot of work with Child Protective Services or the Children's Aid Society in Ontario. So I'm familiar with the Ontario laws and what goes on with children's aid there, but I read about and I hear from parents in other provinces. So every province is different. So I can only speak as an expert about Ontario, but we can try to extrapolate. And anyway, the point is, we're hearing more in different provinces and different states of Child Protective Services coming in and removing children when the parents are doing things like that. And we have to be very careful, because I don't take a black and white view. If a parent is teaching a child, let's say that if a white parent teaches a child that blacks are evil, should they have the child removed? I don't think so. Putting a child in foster care, it could do more damage than having a racist parent. However, if someone finds out about this, then I think they should talk to the parent and say, technically, that can be considered child abuse. Teaching them this kind of hateful information which will hinder them moving forward can be seen as a type of child abuse. And in the courts, that you're running the risk of that. And if they talk to the parent like that and give them a warning and say, look, you can have your own views, but inculcating your child with this, society is saying that's not cool. All right. So, and warning them, I think that's reasonable. However, if we go back to the trans issue, we are hearing that, and the laws are changing, that if a parent refuses to abide by a child's demand to go on hormone blockers or to call them a different name and everything, that might constitute the same type of abuse or neglect or bad parenting that warrants a removal in the state's eye. And that's very concerning. And again, I've done so many child protective cases. Most workers have a good heart. Most workers just want to do what's best for kids and for society. But there are some workers who are social justice warriors. They are young. They're taught from a very young age in school that, that this type of thinking is bad. It's evil. You're a Nazi if you believe this. So it's not like a parent is teaching a child how to burn stakes on a cross, crosses on a lawn, sorry. All they're teaching the child is maybe saying, hey, you know what? The immigration policies of Europe are problematic because of A, B, and C. You know, go watch a Tommy Robinson video. And if a parent says that, and that gets equated with teaching them hate, to me, that's a serious problem. So
Yeah.
I'm not a fan of the state intervening in most cases. Having said that, I have seen legitimate cases, whether it's abuse or neglect, or some other type of really bad parenting, where the state does have to intervene. So you might be a shitty parent, you might be a racist, you might be doing things that I think is reprehensible and shouldn't be tolerated. But do I think that warrants the state's removal of a child? I don't think so. I think the state should come in, talk to the parent again, and warn them about the possible impact. And the fact is, in this society, the kid will be removed. I don't think it's the right thing to do, but there is a risk that they'll be removed. And that goes back to consequences. If a parent knows this and they still say, no, I'm still going to brainwash my kid and make them a hateful kid, well, you know, now you kind of brought it on yourself.
Yeah.
Even if I disagree with it.
All right. Well, we'll see if there's one more question maybe. And if not, I think we might end it there and maybe touch base in a few weeks. I'd be curious to talk to you about what's been going on in Ontario since we last spoke regarding those trans laws and everything.
Sure, we can do an update on that. I'd be happy to do that. And yeah, I mean, look, I hope that for today, you had your 2-year-old and your 4-year-old, and I tried to provide information that's A, specific to their ages, B, specific to your situation, right? And then C, kind of generalizable to any age, any type of parenting parenting arrangement, because these are kind of like underlying principles that any parent should consider. So we mixed it up a bit. I hope everybody kind of got a little bit from here or there, even if they have different age kids, different sex kids, or whatever. Some of these principles were, they're universal.
Okay,
it should be.
Yeah, and I would like to do some follow-ups regarding parenting in the future. Maybe get into some more in-depth conversations regarding the different styles of parenting that you brought up.
Okay, sure. Maybe bring Holly in. We'll have the two of you. We'll discuss this.
Yeah, I see that going very, very well.
It'll make for great TV or great podcasting. Come on,
Jerry. All right. Well, I'm not seeing any more questions, so we're gonna end the broadcast there. And thank you very much. Thank you, everybody who tuned in. I hope it was informative and enjoyable.
Thanks for having me.
Have a wonderful day.